If you think it, it will change the way you perceive yourself, and it will change your body slightly. What is up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Today's ASMR sip is 1907water.com. Coupon code Russo. ASMR Spritz Intelligent Elephant Cobalt. This is the newest one that's available for you to buy. Here's the noises. This is a super heavy scent. This is definitely a clubbing fragrance. This is a fragrance that, like, if you're going out in a club environment, you're going to be able to be smelled versus all the other colognes. This is super sharp. The other ones are subtle, mild, could wear them every day. I'm not saying you couldn't wear Cobalt every day. I'm just saying, like, this is the one if you're looking for the club fragrance that I would check out. All right, today I'm going to be talking about moving your neurochemistry, spiritual biohacking, right? I wanted to bridge into this topic eventually, so I'm going to do an introduction of one of the NGL questions that I got in my NGL Q&A on Instagram at RussoLifts. Follow me there. I had a guy who was in the Army. He tested his natural testosterone in the Army, and it was like 700 plus. He then tells me that, he gets out of the Army, he goes back to civilian life, and he's doing everything he was, exercising, eating right, sleeping right, fiddled with all the variables, and he can't get his numbers above, I think it was like 520. Right. And obviously he wants 700 plus. He's asking me, like, did I hit a plateau? Do I need TRT? Like, what happened? My 2 cents is that could be his neurochemistry. That could be his spirit becoming more, in quotation marks, beta, entering civilian life again. Right. When we look at the ultimate epitome of pushing your neurochemistry to the absolute game dog max, the golden Mike Tyson, right? When we study his psychology.
My mission is to go and destroy and not to let anything get involved. If you get punched, you get hurt. I refuse to be hurt, knocked down, and knocked out. I can't lose. I refuse to lose.
That would be the psychology that inherits the most RNA opening up and causing the highest natural testosterone production. And he pushed his neurochemistry all the way over there to become a heavyweight boxing champion, where if you looked at all his opponents dwarfed him, right? But he was the most game dog. Why was he the most game dog? Because he moved his mind over there. Right, that could have been started from childhood trauma and everything, but really his superpower was that his neurochemistry was so skewed over to that gameness that impacted his natural testosterone, that impacted how his muscles fire, that impacted his muscle fiber types, aka he had all fast twitch muscle. He could throw bombs the entire time like a complete pit bull and his body would recover. That all stems from the mind. Thoughts become things. Kai Green, right? What does that mean? If you think it, it will change the way you perceive yourself, and it will change your body slightly. So how am I relating it back to more like, okay, Ryan, just rambling on about Mike Tyson, and yeah, he has a bit more game personality. If this guy was in the Army, he was with all his Army dogs. They're all pushing each other. They're all feeding off their neurochemistry. Remember, everyone has a pineal gland. Some of them might be calcified, giving you the fluoride stare, but everyone's born with a pineal gland, and those pineal glands detect the neurochemistry around you, and that will feed off and change the way you are. That's like you are the top 4 people in your life. You become more like them, whether they're, pussy ass bitches or whether they're game individual gangsters, right? You're gonna move towards either way, and that will dictate all these sorts of biomarkers. And it's like one of those things where, as a male, in my opinion, males like to push a limit, whether you like it or not. If you started pushing a limit and you stayed within your limits, right, that's the key, you would find more fulfillment as a male. So it's like constantly avoiding danger will lead towards changes in biochem, in my opinion, of your body. Constantly staying in danger will lead towards adaptations. So what I say for this Army guy is, I said, maybe it's the mentality, right? Maybe it's the mentality. I had another guy in my DM box who is a police officer, and he was asking about androgen receptor overexpression, where he went into an MMA gym, he started sparring all of a sudden he has way more vigor, he notices everything. That wasn't AR overexpression, that was probably his 5-AR expression changing and his body adapting to being in the fight or flight response so viciously and constantly having that androgen signaling of being anxious. Even in wrestling practice, right? When we got to the end and everyone wrestles everyone in a wrestling practice, you just rotate and everyone is no mercy on the wrestling mat. You get anxious. I would get anxious over just that every single day, repetition as a kid, all the way into high school. That changed my neurochem, right? I knew that it was either I'm going to get dogged down or I'm going to be the big dog, right? It doesn't matter, but that was the neurochem firing that I always had. Same goes with this army guy, same goes with this police officer. So what I'm saying is, like, you can push your neurochemistry any which way you want. You could argue that, oh, if I push my neurochem to high dopaminergic drive, then I'm going to sacrifice my nerd capabilities. I'm not going to be able to focus as much. I'm going to have more ADHD and I'm going to be more fidgety, not wanting to sit still. You can look at it as a man of the fields. Or do I want to push my biochem the other way? Man of the tents. Do I want less of that dopaminergic drive, more of that, calmness, stableness to, again, facilitate studying, facilitate a creative headspace? Because me working with creatives like Andrew and Austin, we can tell we're in a different headspace, right? I'm the hustler. They're the creators. They're in a slower creative headspace. I'm not comparing myself to them like, oh, I think faster than them. Oh, I push harder than them. They are tailoring their neurochem to their fucking art, right? Which is creation. Creation, you can't sit there and be like hyper driven. Like, if I would milk Andrew or Austin of like ideas, they would turn to shit. They need to sit there, create, needs to come to them, need to be in a different headspace. That's a whole different neurochem, right? Than the hustler, who you can't sit there and think. Like, a hustler's all trigger pulling. All I do is trigger pull, right? When I'm working correctly. This applies to actual biochem markers in the body. And when you're bodybuilding, that's why, like, grunting, getting aggressive in the gym, how the Trent twins say, get manic before the gym, that will impact how your physique looks if you consistently push your neurochemistry that way. And you don't need any drugs to really push your neurochemistry, right? I wasn't super game before getting into combat. The minute I became into combat, naturally, I more formed that way. All my wrestling friends were obviously had different neurochem than my IT programming friends. And like, I was the Sigma that had like 5 different friend groups because I wanted all these different frequencies so I could form my own frequency and be able to, again, mesh with anyone, right? That was the whole goal, is I wanted to be able to mesh with anyone. But if you're thinking that, your libido is going down, everything, blah, 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 maybe start pushing your neurochemistry in the right direction. I feel like anger as a male is frowned upon these days, and it's sad, right? Because anger is a powerful emotion. And when we see Tom Brady, who's the GOAT of football, talk about how anger was so good for him to keep him driven.
You've got to create a lot of different emotion to heighten your sense of awareness and focus. Like, for me, anger was good. Anger was good because it was motivating. The more I could create an enemy, the more I wanted to go out and kill those guys. Now, I knew I was going to kill them physically, but man, if I could just, what did they say? And what did they look like? Did they disrespect me at all? And did that say something? Like, those are little things that can get me right in the emotional.
This is all neurochemistry modulation, spiritual biohacking, that the top champions, the top GOAT of the NFL, is talking about how being angry to beat these guys is what kept him fixated, what's kept his neurochemistry locked in to him being the sharpshooter, the master player of coordinating multiple teams to go to the Super Bowl. His neurochem constantly had to be on point, and you constantly should be trying to trick your mind into pushing harder and or being more relaxed, being in a creative headspace if you're trying to create, or if you're trying to study, being more in a meditative state. Move your mind around, learn how to move it around, and then learn from the top of how they change their mentalities. My last thing I'll close on is my dad was a Division I long distance runner and has 30 plus state champions under his belt in Western Pennsylvania. And I always ran with these champions, right? When I was even like 10, 12 years old, I would go to his practices and I would get to see the mentality of a long distance running champion. Trust me, that's the most extreme neurochem ever to be able to withstand that pain racing. And I constantly try to push my mind harder than I immediately knew I did not have a mentality anywhere near capable of being a state champion, and I had to move my mind over there. So don't be afraid to move your neurochemistry around. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself, and don't be afraid to lean into the yang. You're supposed to be masculine. Lean into the fucking yang. You don't need to be in the fucking yin the whole time, the yin. It doesn't matter. If you want to be in the yang and people are telling you to calm down your ego and everything, just shut them all out. You don't need to flare your ego on anyone, but if you're trying to build an ego, there's nothing wrong with that as a male, as long as it's justified, and justification could be sheer work output towards your goal. Doesn't have to be actual achievement. You could be spinning your wheels, but they're fucking spinning while other people's aren't. So just keep that in mind. I'll see you guys in my next video.